But it's very relevant to the story I'm going to tell you because we are a manufacturing organization. We've been around for a long time and we come from the roots of Switzerland. These are the two things I'm going to cover. The first one is over the 125 years, how we've adapted, most recently the last 3 years to keep it more recent. And then I'm going to talk about what it means for leadership, because that's really where the interesting stuff is for us HR folk. So, hi everybody, I am Caroline Barth. I work at Lonza and have done for close to 3 years now. And some of you may know the company, but I'd imagine most of you don't. So Lonza was founded in 1897, so 125 years ago last month, in a very small Swiss town in the middle of the Valais, for those of you who know Switzerland. And it takes its name from a nearby river. So here's some, interesting facts for you. But in the course of the 20th century, when Lonza was establishing itself, we evolved from hydroelectricity, that's where we started, and C2 chemistry, through to nitrogen chemistry, to petrochemistry, and moving today to what we're known for in the biochemistry space. So we are very much a biotech organization. Now, what we also do is make the medicine for the big pharmas. So we are a contract manufacturer. And the company that made us famous in the everyday world is Moderna. So those of you who are familiar with the Moderna vaccine against COVID, Lonza is the main producer for that. So we are a B2B. We're hidden in the background, but we do great stuff and do fabulous science and chemistry to make everybody a bit healthier in the world. So that's just a quick background to Lonza. But it's very relevant to the story I'm going to tell you because we are a manufacturing organization. We've been around for a long time. And we come from the roots of Switzerland. And all those things may tell you a little bit about the culture that we have. So as we go on, and I think I have control over my slides. There we go. I'll flick forward. This is the two things I'm going to cover. The first one is over the 125 years, how we've adapted, most recently the last 3 years to keep it more recent. And then I'm going to talk about what it means for leadership, because that's really where the interesting stuff is for us HR folk. So the first slide, I've only got 3 in total. It's just a bit of a snail or a whirlwind of what Lonza's been through in the past couple of years. And this will set the context. So I joined in 2020, just as the world was going into lockdown. Interesting start, right? Many of you have done that as well. So again, another conversation for another day. But I joined the day we announced our partnership with Moderna. Now, we're a company, and as you can see in the middle of my snail, of about 6 billion and 16,000 people at that time. And having to ramp up to make a brand new medicine with a brand new technology, with people we didn't have, for a world that needs it like yesterday, was a very compelling change initiative. So we literally embarked on a journey of finding over 4,000 people in 1 year to join the company, to join us on the journey to make the medicine for Moderna vaccine and other things, because it's not our core business, but it was part of our imperative. Shortly after that, we got a new CEO. And any of you who've been through a CEO transition know that comes with change. It comes with great change, but definitely change on an agenda, maybe structure, also maybe on people, as you know, that's quite common too, but also on how the business is going to be run. And that's exactly what happened over the course of the few years. And why this is relevant is because this leads on to what HR needed to do, to what leadership needs to be. So bear with me while I tell a little bit of our background. New CEO comes in, new structure comes in, which was in January 21. Then we sold off part of our legacy business and focused more on biotech and pharma. So sold off literally a massive chunk of our history. So $4 billion sale of a part of our company. So we then shrunk in size, but literally we grew in that size again in the coming months in order to then deliver what we needed to do for society and the business at large. As I said, the new CEO comes in with great new ideas on how to run the company. One of them is very familiar to any of you who works in manufacturing, around the lean operating model. You may have heard of Danaher's model or Toyota's model, and Lonza has its own model called the Lonza Lean Management Business System. So that brought in a change as well. And all of this while, HR are catching up, saying, okay, how do we best serve? And servant leadership is most definitely at the core of lean as well. So it was like, okay, what does this mean for HR and what does this mean for leadership? So the next slide is the same, but I've superimposed on top of that what HR had to respond with. So the hypergrowth is where I start at the number one at the bottom of this slide. We had to really be creative at bringing in thousands of people into this little small village in the Valais in the heart of Switzerland. So you've got to get creative on where you find them, right? So we got super creative and realized that we would have to go outside our usual boundaries. So we were going to markets we'd never approached before to bring people in. And to cut a long story short, we did bring the people in and we were able to produce this vaccine at the speed the society in Moderna needed it. So there's a happy end there. But this was part of our agenda. So piling the people in the door, onboarding. And then it's like, well, hold on, we need a people strategy here. You know, what is our strategy apart from getting people in the door? And very quickly we realized that as part of lean, you need to be very simple with your language and very effective. So we said, let's not create a fancy strategy. Let's really do something simple, memorable, and do it really well that's simple and effective with good discipline works. And this is where we came up with a people strategy in my bullet number 2 here called Come, Stay and Grow. That's it. Come, stay and grow. So come to Lonza, 4,500 people, please. Stay here because we really want you to, help us produce this medicine and all the other medicines we make for all the other great companies. And we want you to grow with us because it's not just coming in for this job. We want you to stay forever. So the people strategy was launched. And then it's like, well, hang on a second. We need some data. We need to know how quick are we running in our recruitment? Can we be faster? What's our turnover rate? And we were a company who didn't have much of this real-time data available. So we had Workday, which we all know is a great tool, but it wasn't really producing anything of use. So we quickly invested in technology to allow managers to access what is their turnover rate, what is their demographics, what is the exit reason, why are people leaving, and to really give managers data at their fingertips so they could lead. Okay, so this is new. So managers are now getting data to lead. So as all this is happening, we are changing the role of the leader, but we're not really talking about it because all we're trying to do is hire, hire, hire. And we're forcing managers to onboard and to, make sure people come, stay and grow, but we're not really talking about their role. And this only came apparent a little while later. So in the meantime, in this flurry of activity, we're launching all this data to allow managers to, have access to what's going on. And then we thought, oh, I know, let's do a global survey, let's use a very famous vendor and get some data so managers know what's going on. So once again, we're providing good tools, but really, what's the role of the leader in this? And it all becomes obvious in hindsight, but the role of the leader really sat at the core of our future and our success. But we hadn't got to that yet. We were just crunching through all this. And then we're like, let's overhaul our bonus system at the same time. The board came to. I'm like, okay, we do have something that's quite archaic, not pay for performance, not really ESG. I know, let's recreate something. So on top of all this change, we brought our performance management system right up to date, including ESG for everybody, because we felt it mattered and we felt it was something that if we're going to, adapt to the changes, let's make them relevant in real time for the sustainable future we want to be part of. And then we thought, okay, we have this people strategy, but we need to measure it. So throw some KPIs on, how fast are we hiring people? How many days does it take for them to start? What is the turnover rate? Really getting all this data working. So we started putting in some key people KPIs. And then it dawned on us, and this is the point I'm getting to, is what is the role of the leader in the company? And this is where we had to sit and do some research, do some crowdsourcing, speak to the executive committee and say, hell, with all this going on, what is the role of the leader? Because it's different. So in the past, it was maybe managing shift patterns. It was managing maybe a bit of well-being to ensure people were showing up to work. But it wasn't really using data insights to drive change. And it wasn't really the caring that we were, especially through the COVID period, realizing people just needed. And it wasn't at least in the Lonza spectrum around, making sure we were nurturing people for growth. It was a little bit like, to be a bit provocative and extreme, come in, do your job, get paid, go home. No, people need more than that. And most definitely, our leaders needed to be made aware of the changing world. So here is when I come onto my last slide, which is what I've been building up to. So I hope you're still with me. Was really around what is the leadership imperative for Lonza. And this is the slide. This is the only slide I have now to tell that story. And again, simple. We are a very simple organization. We are lean. We looked at research. We spoke to people. And we looked at all the things that were happening for Lonza and said, who do we need to be to win? Who do we need to be to unleash the power of our people? And we came up with 3 pillars. And it goes like this. We need to care, we need to communicate, and we need to coach. That's it. That's all we need to do. It's quite hard to do, but that's all we need to do. And why this is not just off the shelf, this was very much looking at research and saying, what makes great leadership. But also looking at if we're a lean organization, and you may be familiar with language like we go to the Gemba, we need to be close to our people. Respect is a real clear part of lean, as is listening. So we created what we thought was a good leadership framework, but made it Lonza. So what we came up with is, you need to care as a manager. This means you are listening and you are advancing the lean culture and you're supporting your people. And you're partnering with this is, again, the respect comes into this, and you're partnering with your team on what engages them. And you're most definitely partnering with them on the personal growth side. And I'm in Singapore today, and I was having a session with some of the top talents, as many of us often do. And I was saying, what causes you to stay? And they were saying, it's great leadership. And I'm like, well, what is great leadership? And all of them said, it's a manager who values me. It's a manager who cares for my development. And it's a manager who gives me career opportunities. And that is this column. If you care about your people, they will stay. And it's actually quite relevant here in Singapore, because those of you with an Asia base will know the war for talent is hot. Oh my goodness, people are offering all kinds of salaries for people to come and join them. So what makes people stay matters more than anywhere. And what the people were telling us today in Singapore was, it's not about the money. Yes, it has to be right. We want to be cared for. So that's why this pillar really resonates. The second pillar was around communicate. And again, when I travel to the sites, I hear people say, but why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. I had to maybe cut resources, or I got a no on this. Context, context, context. And this is what this pillar is all about, is as a great leader, you are simple in your communication. You are really breaking it down so everybody understands their role in it, and they understand the context of what they're operating in and why. And that's a really important one, is why are we doing what we're doing? Maybe it's around purpose, but it's also around an imperative for change. And like every company, we have a set of values, and we believe in the communicate, you need to be communicating and role modeling those values. So that's why you'll see here, we broke it out into the connector, so connecting the dots for people, but role modeling. And the last part is around coaching. And this is very much at the heart of lean as well. You go and listen, but you also have a role in coaching. And coaching is sometimes for continuous improvement, very much part of lean. But it's also about psychological safety. It's about coaching when things go wrong. It's about learning from mistakes, celebrating successes, but also having that safety when things don't work. And again, to link it back to the first point, maybe, it's really about coaching for success. What do you need to grow? How will you have a sustainable future in this company together with us? How can I coach you for that performance and for what we need from you to together build that great future? So that's really what happened. We went through a whole 3 years of change. We had COVID. We were helping generate the vaccine, which was part of our purpose. And through all that, we realized that we were forgetting to have a clarity around leaders about what their role is. And it dawned on us when we were doing like the voice of employee, we're like, yeah, we have a voice of employee. It's really important. But what matters is not what the global results say. What matters is what every single leader then does with their data and what change they drive at the lowest and localist level. So we were starting to understand that we can't just give managers data. We can't just say, hey, you need to go manage all these thousands of new being. we had to give them a framework to operate under. And this is becoming the framework. It's still quite new, but it is landing so very well. People are saying this wording is really relevant to the world I live in. And it's quite a contrast from I started out this little Swiss valley, this very male-dominated, hardcore industry of manufacturing. And the word care is landing right at the heart of our success now. And you will hear people use it all the time. I even heard managers talking about bringing love into their work. And it's resonating so well because at the end of the day, I think we're all at our best when we're cared for, when we understand the context, and when we're coached for even better performance. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. It's been a great couple of years. I can't wait to see what the next 3 years are going to be like once we've embedded this into how we work, how we hire, how we promote, into how we assess. We have only just started on the awareness campaign around this. So there's so much more to come. And maybe next time we do this Congress, I can tell you about how we've really lived this and what the results are been on the finance as well as on the culture. But that's for next time. So thanks for listening. That's what I had to say. And I'm absolutely available and open for any questions.
Caroline, thank you so much for this great presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do use the Q&A section if you have any questions, or in the chat function. We're happy to receive them. And I guess people can reach out to you. The best way to reach out to you is on LinkedIn, or any other platforms. And people can also download your presentation is not going to be shared, I understand, but people can definitely contact you and ask about the content if there are specifics that they want to discuss.
Absolutely. No, very happy to engage in conversation offline. We've been on a journey. Maybe you have a similar context. Very happy to share the highs and the lows of the journey as much as the content.
Indeed. Is there anything that you would want to share with us? Any sort of golden nuggets or something that you would recommend for people who are going through a similar journey?
Yeah, as I said, we came to this leadership framework quite late. And maybe that has to be that way at some level, because if we'd have come out with this at the beginning, it wouldn't have landed and people would have thought, yeah, nice chart on the wall. So I think part of me says we should have had it earlier, but I'm not sure realistically whether we'd have been able to, because the content emerged. And I think, having it now is really landing because maybe there was a bit of hunger for it. So when it came, people were like, thank you, I now understand. So I would say don't be shy of using bold language. I most definitely encourage the use of simple language. And as you can see, it's 3 C's, it's 3 words. And using the word care was bold, definitely in the industry I'm in. And I think I would just encourage you all when you're doing this is just describe what you want to see. It's aspirational, and maybe one day we can live into it. But even if it sounds aspirational, it's still worth that bold step.
Do you think that? Thank you for that. The recent things that's been happening in the world, the pandemic, what's happening now with inflation, with the Great Resignation, with layoffs and sort of this different energy that's going on in the world of work, is how did that impact everything?
Yeah, totally. And there's a question there. It's very similar to Jay. Thanks for your question around preparing leaders for this disruption and uncertainty, right? And I think I will bring it back to one of the messages that I had in the first slide around data. We are a very data-driven HR function, and we're becoming it. As I said, it's a journey as well. But whatever presentation we bring to any of our leaders, it's data-driven, it's research-based. It's not, well, this is what we're thinking, and here's a good idea. It's no, this is what the latest data says. So if it's on inflation, we're constantly working with other companies. We're working with the right sources centrally. We're bringing it to the managers and then co-creating the solution. So yes, there's uncertainty out there, but as long as you bring data as a function, I really feel the managers then feel, okay, you're partnering. And yes, you may get it wrong, but if you continue to bring data, you can real-time course correct. So if I take inflation, we have brought this, I think, as a topic at least 3 times to the executive committee with the latest data saying, do we want to do a mid-year adjustment? Do we want to wait for the end year? Do we think our budget's enough? Do we need to adapt? And it's one example, but it's constantly bringing real-time data to the attention of leaders to co-create the solution.
Great. Future skills for HR. What HR leaders need to focus on to be relevant and bring even more value?
Yeah, I'll probably sound a bit repeating, but there's definitely 2 words that jump to mind that I've said already. One of them is going to be data literate, and one of them's going to be bold. So you can use the word courage or bold. I think most definitely leaders in HR need to lean in. And maybe we've been doing it for a long time, but maybe now more than ever, because we don't know a lot of things because of the speed of change. So it really is, having the courage to say, right, this is what I know. This is the data I'm getting. Here's my view. And if you get it wrong, just course correct. So for me, I would say the skills are really around courage and being bold. Like being bold, using the word care in my industry is bold. There'll be other examples of that for you. And being data literate, really not shying away from saying, you know what, I'm going to go and get you the data on that, and really using it at all times. So, the voice of employee data or the employee survey data, having it at your fingertips at all time, reference it, the amount of recognitions that are being given the company, know how many it is, and if you have a tool that can help you provide it, great. But really being data literate is definitely very big currency at the moment in this so much uncertainty.
Maria has a question here. Did you want to read it out, or you can see the question?
I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to scan down. I can't see one from Maria, I'm afraid. I don't have that.
Okay. Any ideas how you will measure progress and maturity in leadership according to your new leadership framework, and also development of the culture?
Brilliant question. It's totally on our minds. Absolutely, Maria. So we are, for now, we're into an awareness session. So we're really going around the company, having sessions where we're engaging with leaders, saying, what does care mean to you? So we really feel before we do any measurements, it's only fair to get people savvy with the topics. So that's our first thing. But we are definitely looking into, I think we use Glint as a vendor for our voice of employee, but we can absolutely use them for leadership as well. So you can either do subsets of the current questionnaire, or you can do pulses on leadership. And we're most definitely going to be doing that. We use 360s now, which are built around this as well. So if a manager wants to, get some feedback, what we're offering now is, well, here's a 360 built around care, communicate, and coach. Today, we don't have any expectation on that being shared or that meeting a certain grade. I would love to. I know I visited Salesforce a few years ago, where they are very bold in how they're radically transparent with their data. So people applying for jobs can see the data on their employees, on their future managers. I'd love for us to think about a possibility like that, where our leadership scores around these things are visible. And when people want to look for jobs, they look at what the score is of the manager and see if that's the kind of person they want to work for. So that's a little bit way out. We're not there yet. I think it's awareness, and we'll be using Glint 360s to measure it most definitely in the near term. And then over time, we'll see how bold we can be.
Great. Belonging is a major factor in employee retention, as we learned yesterday. How can HR support leaders so people feel belong?
Yeah, it's very, very present in my world the last 2 days here in Singapore. We have been talking about retention of employees because, like in many locations, and definitely Singapore, there is a very high double-digit people leaving for other opportunities. So how do you keep them? And belonging is really one of the secret sources that we were talking about here, because pay will get you so far, and that's okay. It needs to be right. But ultimately, and I think research will back me up on this, I think employees who belong are 4 times more likely to stay in a company. And belonging really is quite personal at some level and very cultural. So here we were talking about in Singapore about really notching up on the cultural day. So we call it IDB, could call it DNI. So around, how do you get people to show up as their best selves? And they were saying here in this environment, it's things like coming to work in your national dress. Now, that may not work in other cultures. It may not work even in the same country in a different site. But for us, that's something the employees really value because they want to show up as who they are. And that sense of belonging, I am here and I belong to a greater good. And then one other example they came up with is they have a kindness movement here, which is when people can choose to go out for a day of their choice with their colleagues or on their own to work in society and come back and post photographs. And maybe that's something that you do already, but the sense of belonging when people come back and say, I went to this charity, this is somewhere my daughter is sponsored by, or whatever that personal story is. They post it on the television, they have it in their newsletter. This is not radical stuff, but they were really saying this really works here. And by creating this sense of belonging, this sense of I have a role here as a human being, it really is notching up engagement. So I think to me, it's very much about engaging in the conversation of what belonging looks like in that context. And again, Singapore had it nailed today, and I was really pleased with their examples.
Great. So, Caroline, thank you so much for this session. If anyone else has any questions, let's just quickly see the. No, we don't have any other questions at this stage. So, thank you so much for the discussion and for your presentation, and we look forward to welcoming you on board again at some stage. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you do want to get engaged with Caroline, please do reach out on social media, or we can put you in touch as well.
Wonderful. Thomas, thank you very much. The team, great organization, great sessions, and thank you for having me.